goodness you're all right. I got here in time.
The Dick Van Dyke Show wasn't just one of television's finest comedies. It was also a launching pad for some of Hollywood's biggest names. From 1961 to 1966, the halls of that fictional writer's room at the Alan Brady Show welcomed faces that would go on to become household names in their own right. Here are 15 celebrities you didn't know were on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Number 15, Don Rickles.
I think you're right.
See, didn't I tell you he's a sweetheart of a guy?
Long before he became known as Mr. Warmth and the undisputed king of insult comedy, Don Rickles appeared on the Dick Van Dyke Show twice in 1964. He played Lyle Delp, a bumbling would-be robber who gets trapped in an elevator with Rob and Laura in the episode titled 4 1/2. The title referred to the elevator being stuck between the 4th and 5th floors. Rickles was still working nightclubs and making the rounds of television guest spots back then. His sharp comedic timing was already there, but he hadn't yet reached the level of fame that would come later with CPO Sharkey and his legendary appearances on The Tonight Show and Dean Martin's celebrity roasts. On the Dick Van Dyke Show, Rickles played it straighter than his usual routine, showing his range as an actor. He appeared again in the follow-up episode, The Alan Brady Show Goes to Jail, where his character, Lyle Delp, returns to try once more at being a criminal with equally poor results. Number 14, Greg Morris.
Let's go.
In 1963, a young actor named Greg Morris appeared in what would become one of the Dick Van Dyke Show's most famous episodes, That's My Boy. In this episode, Rob Petrie becomes convinced that he and Laura brought home the wrong baby from the hospital. Greg Morris played Mr. Peters, the father of the other baby born on the same day as the little Richie. The episode's punchline created one of the longest studio audience laughs in television history. When Morris appeared on screen revealing that the other family was African American, the audience understood immediately that Rob's fears were absurd. It was 1963, and this kind of racial humor done with intelligence and warmth rather than malice was groundbreaking for television. Just 3 years later, Morris would land the role that would define his career, Barney Collier, the electronics expert on Mission Impossible. He played that role from 1966 to 1973, becoming one of the first African-American actors to have a prominent role in a dramatic television series. Morris returned to the Dick Van Dyke Show in 1965, playing a completely different character named Frank Sticks Mandalay, a drummer and army buddy of Rob's. Number 13, Jaime Farr.
For the push-up. That's coffee.
1, 2, 3, 4. Right?
Years before he put on a dress as Corporal Klinger on MASH, Jaime Farr appeared in 4 first-season episodes of the Dick Van Dyke Show as a delivery boy. The character didn't even have a consistent name. Sally Rogers dubbed him Ptomaine Charlie because of the questionable quality of the food he delivered to the writer's room. Farr was just starting his career in the early 1960s, taking whatever work he could get. These small roles on the Dick Van Dyke Show helped pay the bills while he waited for his big break. That break wouldn't come until 1972 when he joined the cast of MASH in what was supposed to be a one-episode role. The character of Klinger, who wore dresses in a futile attempt to get discharged from the army, became so popular that Farr stayed with the show for all 11 seasons, and even reprised the role in the sequel series After MASH. Number 12, Bob Crane.
Ah, Cleopatra, my enchanted.
Bob Crane appeared on the Dick Van Dyke Show in 1963, playing Harry Rogers in the episode One Angry Man. At the time, Crane was better known as a radio personality in Los Angeles. His morning show was wildly popular, and he had interviewed some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, from Frank Sinatra to Marilyn Monroe. But Crane wanted to be an actor. He'd been taking small television roles whenever he could, including appearances on The Twilight Zone and other popular shows of the era. Just 2 years after his appearance on the Dick Van Dyke Show, Crane would land the role of Colonel Hogan in Hogan's Heroes, the CBS sitcom about Allied prisoners of war running covert operations from inside a German POW camp during World War II. Hogan's Heroes ran for 6 seasons and made Crane a star, though his later life would be marked by tragedy and scandal. But back in 1963, he was just another working actor happy to get a guest spot on one of television's finest comedies. Number 11, Ken Berry.
copying your move.
Eh?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now come at me again. I'll show you another.
Ken Barry appeared twice on The Dick Van Dyke Show, playing a character named Tony Daniels. Barry was a dancer and comedic actor who had trained in the Bucks County Playhouse and performed in the Billy Barnes Revue, a theatrical production that had also featured other future television stars. Barry's appearances on The Dick Van Dyke Show came early in his television career. He'd go on to star in F Troop, the ABC sitcom about an incompetent cavalry unit at Fort Courage, from 1965 to 1967. Barry played Captain Wilton Parmenter, the bumbling but good-hearted commanding officer who was constantly resisting the advances of Wrangler Jane. After F Troop ended, Barry took over for Andy Griffith in the retooled Mayberry RFD, which ran from 1968 to 1971. Later, he'd become a regular on Mama's Family, playing the character Vinton Harper for 7 seasons. Throughout his long career, Barry maintained that gentle, befuddled comic persona that had served him so well, starting with those early appearances on The Dick Van Dyke Show. Number 10, Richard Dawson.
Where you were, but you're welcome to stay where you are.
I certainly will, my...
Richard Dawson, who would later become famous as the host of Family Feud, appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show in 1965. He played Tracy Radigan, a character actor in the episode The Case of the Pillow. At the time, Dawson was still establishing himself in American television after moving from England. Dawson had been a stand-up comedian in Britain before coming to the United States in the early 1960s. His quick wit and charm were evident even in his small role on The Dick Van Dyke Show. The following year, he'd land a more substantial role on Hogan's Heroes, playing British Corporal Peter Newkirk from 1965 to 1971. But it was game shows that would make Dawson a household name. He became a regular panelist on Match Game in the 1970s, where his cheeky personality and habit of kissing the female contestants made him a fan favorite. That led to his hosting gig on Family Feud, which he helmed from 1976 to 1985, and briefly again from 1994 to 1995. Those early television appearances, including his spot on The Dick Van Dyke Show, helped him develop the persona that would make him one of America's most beloved game show hosts. Number 9, Alan Melvin.
What's the difference? The captain wants his scapegoat, I'll be his scapegoat.
Alan Melvin was one of those character actors whose face you'd recognize instantly, even if you didn't know his name. He appeared multiple times on The Dick Van Dyke Show, playing different characters including Sam Pomerantz, Gar Jenkins, and Harrison B. Harding. Carl Reiner, the show's creator, liked to bring back reliable character actors to play different roles, and Melvin was one of the best. Melvin had started his career in radio before transitioning to television in the 1950s. His appearances on The Dick Van Dyke Show came in the middle of a busy period where he was working constantly in television. He'd go on to have recurring roles on The Andy Griffith Show, Gomer Pyle USMC, and The Brady Bunch, where he played Sam Franklin, Alice's boyfriend, who owned a butcher shop. Later, Melvin would become best known for voicing Magilla Gorilla in the Hanna-Barbera cartoon and for playing Barney Hefner, Archie Bunker's friend, on All in the Family. But in the early 1960s, he was one of the reliable workhorses of television comedy, showing up wherever good character actors were needed. Number 8, Robert Vaughn.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Vaughn appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show in 1963, playing a character named Jim Darling. This was right around the time Vaughn was beginning his run as Napoleon Solo in The Man from UNCLE, the spy series that would make him a major television star. Vaughn had already been nominated for an Academy Award for his supporting role in The Young Philadelphians in 1959, so he wasn't exactly unknown. But his appearance on The Dick Van Dyke Show came at a transitional moment in his career, just as he was moving from film work to television stardom. The Man from UNCLE ran from 1964 to 1968 and became a cultural phenomenon, riding the wave of spy mania that James Bond had started. Vaughn's sophisticated, cool demeanor made him perfect for the role of Napoleon Solo, and he remained associated with that character for the rest of his career. His guest spot on The Dick Van Dyke Show captured him right at that moment before international television fame arrived. Number 7, Wally Cox.
I don't know why not. We're not bride and groom, you know.
Wally Cox, the actor best known for playing the mild-mannered teacher Robinson J. Peepers on Mr. Peepers in the 1950s, appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show during its run. Cox had that distinctive nasal voice and nervous demeanor that made him perfect for playing anxious, intellectual characters. By the time he appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show, Cox was already established as a television personality, but he was transitioning from leading man to character actor. He'd been a star in the early days of television, but as the medium evolved, he found himself taking supporting roles and guest spots on popular shows. Cox was also close friends with Marlon Brando, which surprised many people given how different their public personas were. Brando was the ultimate method actor, intense and brooding, while Cox seemed gentle and almost fragile. But their friendship dated back to their early days in New York, and they remained close until Cox's death in 1973. Number 6. Howard Morris.
About this much white wine.
Howard Morris appeared several times on The Dick Van Dyke Show, most memorably as Mr. Holdecker in the episode The Masterpiece. Morris could play manic comedy like few others, and his performance as the eccentric art appraiser in that episode was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Morris was no stranger to television comedy. He'd been a regular on Your Show of Shows with Sid Caesar, where he'd worked alongside Carl Reiner, the creator of The Dick Van Dyke Show. That connection made him a natural choice for guest appearances. Morris specialized in playing characters who were just slightly unhinged, bringing an intensity to even small roles that made them memorable. Beyond acting, Morris became a successful television director. He directed episodes of Get Smart, The Andy Griffith Show, Gomer Pyle USMC, and eventually returned to direct episodes of The Dick Van Dyke Show itself. His understanding of comedy from both sides of the camera made him invaluable to the sitcoms of the 1960s and 1970s. Number 5. Sheldon Leonard.
2 weeks. Good luck.
The kid breaks me up.
Sheldon Leonard, who was actually one of the executive producers of The Dick Van Dyke Show, appeared in front of the camera in the episode Big Max Calvada, playing the title character. Leonard had been a character actor in films during the 1940s and 1950s, usually playing gangsters and tough guys with his distinctive gruff voice and New York accent. But by the early 1960s, Leonard had transitioned to producing and directing. He was one of the most powerful men in television comedy, having produced The Andy Griffith Show, The Danny Thomas Show, and other hits in addition to The Dick Van Dyke Show. His production company, in partnership with Danny Thomas, essentially defined the sitcom format of that era. When Leonard appeared as Big Max Calvada, a mob boss who threatens Rob Petrie, he was playing exactly the kind of character he'd made a career of in his acting days. It was a perfect piece of stunt casting, letting one of television's most influential producers show that he still had the acting chops that had started his career. Number 4, Danny Thomas.
Paul, could you tell me where I might find Robert Petrie?
Danny Thomas, the star of Make Room for Daddy, later The Danny Thomas Show, appeared on The Dick Van Dyke Show in an uncredited cameo. Thomas was more than just a guest star, though. He was instrumental in getting The Dick Van Dyke Show on the air in the first place. Carl Reiner had created a pilot called Head of the Family in which he played the lead role himself. When it didn't sell, Reiner was discouraged. But Sheldon Leonard, who was producing The Danny Thomas Show, saw potential in the concept. Leonard convinced Thomas to look at it, and Thomas agreed that with some retooling, particularly recasting the lead with Dick Van Dyke, the show could work. Thomas and Leonard used their influence at CBS to get the Dick Van Dyke Show produced. Without their backing, one of television's greatest comedies might never have made it to air. Thomas's appearance on the show was a friendly gesture, a way of showing support for a series that he'd helped bring to life. Number 3. Jerry Van Dyke.
How are you, buddy? How am I? Here, hold these and I'll show you.
Jerry Van Dyke, Dick's younger brother, appeared 3 times on The Dick Van Dyke Show as Rob's brother, Stacy Petrie. The character was the opposite of Rob, quiet, shy, and prone to sleepwalking. But when Stacy was asleep, he transformed into a banjo-playing life of the party and even called his brother Burford for some unexplained reason. The episodes featuring Stacy Petrie allowed the Van Dyke brothers to work together, and their chemistry was natural. But Jerry Van Dyke's career would take a different path than his brother's. He turned down the role of Gilligan on Gilligan's Island, thinking the show would flop. Instead, he took the lead in My Mother the Car, which became notorious as one of television's worst sitcoms. Jerry eventually found success in the 1990s as Luther Van Dam on Coach, for which he received 4 Emmy nominations. But those early appearances on his brother's show captured him at a time when he was still finding his way in television, still figuring out what kind of performer he wanted to be. Number 2, Barbara Feldon.
Garland, it was very considerate of you to bring us the message.
Oh,
Barbara Feldon, who would become famous as Agent 99 on Get Smart, did not actually appear on The Dick Van Dyke Show during its original run. This is a common misconception. However, Feldon and Dick Van Dyke did work together in the 1967 film Fitzwilly, which came out just a year after The Dick Van Dyke Show ended its 5-season run. By that time, Feldon was already starring in Get Smart, which had premiered in 1965. The spy comedy, created by Mel Brooks and Buck Henry, was one of the most popular shows on television, and Feldon's portrayal of the intelligent, capable Agent 99 made her a star. She brought warmth and charm to what could have been a one-note role, making Agent 99 a three-dimensional character who was often smarter than her partner, Maxwell Smart, played by Don Adams. Before Get Smart, Feldon had been a model and appeared in commercials, most famously in a series of Revlon top brass commercials that showcased her sophisticated beauty. She'd studied drama at Carnegie Tech and had worked in theater before making the transition to television. Her intelligence and elegance made her perfect for the role of Agent 99, a character who managed to be both glamorous and competent, in an era when women on television were often portrayed as helpless or silly. Fitzwilly gave Van Dyke and Feldon a chance to show their chemistry in a feature film, with Van Dyke playing a butler who leads a group of thieves, and Feldon as the secretary who discovers their scheme. Though they didn't work together on the show, both became iconic figures in 1960s television comedy. Get Smart ran for 5 seasons, the same length as The Dick Van Dyke Show, and like Van Dyke's series, it remained beloved decades after it went off the air. Number 1, Jackie Joseph.
With the Alan Brady show.
Yeah, how do you know that?
Why I always like those crickets.
Jackie Joseph appeared multiple times on The Dick Van Dyke Show, playing different characters including Alberta Schweitzer, Missy, and Jackie. Joseph was married to Ken Barry, another frequent guest on the show, and they'd met while performing in the Billy Barnes Review. Joseph had a long career as a character actress, appearing in dozens of television shows and films. She had small roles in movies like The Little Shop of Horrors, the original 1960 Roger Corman film, not the musical remake, and Gremlins. On television, she popped up everywhere. Gidget, The Twilight Zone, The Beverly Hillbillies, and many others. What made actors like Joseph valuable to shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show was their reliability. They could come in, deliver a solid performance in a supporting role, and make the regular cast look good. Joseph was part of a generation of working character actors who formed the backbone of television comedy in the 1960s, rarely getting star billing, but always delivering quality work. The Dick Van Dyke Show ran for only 5 seasons, but its impact on television comedy is immeasurable. The show demonstrated that sitcoms could be sophisticated and intelligent while still being funny. It showed that you could respect your audience's intelligence and still get laughs. These guest appearances by future stars show something else too, that Carl Reiner and his team had an eye for talent. They brought in actors who were still developing their craft, gave them good material to work with, and let them shine. Some of these performers, like Don Rickles and Greg Morris, would go on to long and successful careers. Others, like Jaime Farr and Ken Barry, would become sitcom regulars themselves. Looking back at these guest stars now, it's like looking at a snapshot of television history. The Dick Van Dyke Show wasn't just great on its own merits. It was also a place where the next generation of television talent could learn from the best. If you enjoyed learning about these celebrities you didn't know were on the Dick Van Dyke Show, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic television content.